fullness of fullness versus a fullness of empty.
Yes.
Have you heard anything about recommending, like, maybe you start with that, maybe it serves you relatively to, like, start wanting to experience that, and maybe as you do that more, then eventually you move to letting go?
I think that's a very good point. Like, that's sort of Jeffrey. It's good to do something consistently for a while, not to just move from thing to thing. But yeah, you can do this, and then you can do that. And interestingly enough, my grandson learned mindfulness and TM at different times and within the same year. And when he went to his TM teacher for once, I heard some wisdom there. I mean, it wasn't like, do this and don't do that. He said, do your TM and then do your mindfulness. So you can do both. And I guess you could do mindfulness and then TM too. Just don't mix them up. And then you begin to have a sense of what's working well for you. Yeah, that's the point of my book, is to give people a choice and to think, oh, maybe I'll try this for a while and then I'll try that for a while. Yeah, I think it's wise.
Yeah, so you find each person finds their own balance with how much to.
Well, some people are just going to say, this is for me. Yeah, some people are just going to say, this is my path. And other people are going to say, well, I've been doing this for a while, and it did this, but now I'd like to try something else. I think it's perfectly legitimate. Especially right now, because I have this feeling that it's going to be like evolution, that things are going to start to drop off and other things are going to get to be popular, that they'll be good for most people. But right now, it's not like that, first of all. And second of all, it may be true that it really depends on nervous systems. One of the things for me about talking about highly sensitive people that got a little old for me was people wanted me to make generalizations. And I hit my limit with the pandemic. People would want to interview me and have me tell them about how the pandemic is affecting highly sensitive people. And I'd say, I don't know. How's the pandemic affecting left-handed people? It's all different. I like that saying that we're all the same ocean, but different boats, we're experiencing different stuff. And because of that differential susceptibility, highly sensitive people are all over the place. And then I really just like the idea that every nervous system is different, and every awakening is different. So there are some things you should look for awakening, and those things are important because a lot of people think they're awakened and they're not. There's some of that going around. Well, it's okay. Does it hurt anything? I don't know if it hurts anything, except that if you may just stop when you could actually go forward and do something more.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I knew you were going to ask a good question just when I saw you come in. Hi.
Oh, there. Okay, thank you, Elaine. This is really timely for me. And my question is this. I've heard a man speak that I have some respect for. And he was talking about the Enneagram, but from a very spiritual perspective. Mm-hmm. And his statement was something, let me see if I can get this right, because it's important. To do psychological work without spiritual work is incomplete, and to do spiritual work without psychological work is dangerous. And he didn't go on to elaborate, but I'm sure. So I'm just wondering, I've thought about that a lot because I've met people who supposedly are above it all and beyond, and they have tragedies happen and they're not affected by it. Sometimes I wonder if they've just told themselves that's the marker that I'm supposed to have in order to be an enlightened person. And I want to think of myself as being an enlightened person, but actually I'm hiding out. I'm just hiding those
words. You call it spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing, you named it. And I have a particular physical experience when I hear those things. It makes me sort of want to get sick because it doesn't resonate with me, but I'm not saying that it's not actually true. It's just not my experience yet. I'm wondering if you could say anything about that whole thing.
I think you may have come in after I said something about enlightened people who are abuse people, that kind of thing, or spiritual teachers who have been serious problems. And
Right.
and I really like Ken Wilber, his idea that you can wake up, and then you can clean up, and then you can grow up, and you might do all three, or you might do only one and not the other two, and it's important to balance those. He's actually got a couple more, but those are good enough. But I think they're really important, and in my book, I make a big deal out of that, because chapter 2, I address the problem of people who wake up and who have not cleaned up. And, it's tragic you can spend years in therapy and nobody tells you about enlightenment. I think that's tragic. But it's also pretty tragic if you're enlightened and nobody tells you, hey, you could use a little psychotherapy for that there instead of sexually abusing your women disciples. How about cleaning that up, So, and I'd like to think that the East was really good about waking up, and the West is really good about cleaning up. I mean, we've only begun to get good at it, but I really do think that we're making a lot of advances in the field of psychotherapy and of understanding. Like, new disorders are constantly popping up. I gave the example in my book of PTSD. That is not a term that was around until, I think, after World War II. Now we have a new one that's not in the books yet, but it's called moral traumatic. Anyway, it's about people who have moral traumas, such as when they have to kill someone, and they didn't want to, but they had to. So morally, they're just traumatized by some decision that they had to make. So we got lots of stuff up there that we can clean up, but we also ought to be waking up. We ought to be doing them both. Does that help?
It helps.
And so my book actually has people in each chapter work on an inventory of the stuff in their lives they may need to clean up, starting with their ancestors and then their parents and then their own childhood, and then because I think it's not a book about cleaning up, but it's a book about being aware of where you might want to clean up so that you don't come out of the book without having really thought about those issues.
I really appreciate your comments, and I'm not hearing them. They validate a sense that I have internally. So I'm listening to you and not saying, oh, she says it's true, so therefore it's true. But my experience is there's another woman, someone who studied this a lot, that I respect a great deal. And what she's saying resonates in my heart, not in my head.
Right.
So I really appreciate that.
Good. It's a key issue. And when bringing East and West together, there's a real opportunity for something important to happen, I think. Yeah. I call it in my book a supernova, because supernovas happen I think the supernova blew up in the 60s, but it takes time for the light to reach your eyes. And we're now starting to see the effect of what was going on in the 60s, which was this stuff from the East coming to the West. The Zen teachers, the Maharishi, the Sri Aurobindo, the Thich Nhat Hanh, all these people who came and taught people, and then some people continued, some people stopped, but something was started. And now it's starting to show up.
That's so delicious. This is my PS. Because I have had this feeling for several years now. Oh my God, I hope that my health holds out, because I have been waiting my entire life for this time in the world, as though all the turmoil that I've been through in the 60s and everything, and was kind of in the middle of a lot of it, and started TM so many years ago when it wasn't respected and was laughed at. And now it's like, oh, you know what? I'm really glad to be here now, because it's really happening.
Yeah.
And I want to be around to see this whole thing. So.
Yeah, well, we were the pioneers, and we may be like Moses, don't get to live to see the promised land. I'm glad to do that. Yes.
Well, you didn't mention hallucinogenics and plant medicine as far as the 60s and waking up. I don't need you to go into that, but it just occurred to me.
I do mention it in my book, yes.
Yeah, it seems like it might be helpful for some people for waking up when there's too much ego defensive there.
Lots of ego death in those experiences, yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what other question. I really did come because of being a highly sensitive person and wanting more support around that. But something you said about the highly sensitive person, and I think I can tie this into wanting to wake up or wake out of it, is that how important environments are to the highly sensitive people.
There's a bunch of research now about how much we're affected by nature. Even just to having a window that looks out on nature makes us do better. And I try to say something for HSPs in every chapter of my book, but I haven't done much of that today. I don't want to do research showing that highly sensitive people are more likely to get enlightened, because I don't want the people who aren't highly sensitive to then feel, it's impossible for me. And I don't think it's true. But there is it interesting, I cite in the book these people who are convinced that religion and spirituality and all that stuff began when the trait of sensitivity showed up in the human race. Because, think about it, process things more deeply, easily overstimulated. How am I going to solve this? Emotional, the devotion and caring about others, and sensitive to subtle signs. We should be there, but I just don't want to make a big thing of it, because we can be as ignorant as anybody else about it too. So the book's about treating that ignorance, not. But I guess the most important thing is that sensitive people would go in that direction because they got so much they need to deal with.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in the world. How are you going to deal with that? And I always say you only deal with it spiritually, in some spiritual way.
Well, I think last year I had to move back to an environment that wasn't so great. And so that's been very challenging for me. But I've been every morning at 7:30, I'm on a guided meditation. But I don't think that allows me to drop quietly enough. And I keep on hoping that there's going to be some kind of enlightening experience that can help me come out of this shift to an environment that doesn't feel supportive to me. And that's why I guess because I'm trying so many things to find myself again, one could say, find my feet again, find some sense of wanting to be in life again. But so maybe more meditation. But that's why that plant medicine and things like that interest me, because if I'm not getting awakened or being able to get out of this stuck place, what else am I going to do? I mean, I do therapy, I do all kinds of things, but still...
About the doors of perception, and it's like those experiences on various substances will give you a glimpse. If you want it to stay, that's harder. I know someone close to me who tried it and said, well, that was great, but now what? He ended up on antidepressants because there was something ongoing. But for some people it's very life-changing, and then in the process of life being changed, you're looking for a change.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not going to step in and give you personal advice, but I think the fact that you're looking for something is going to help.
Yeah. Is the basic premise of your book then that there are these different kinds of meditation that you can try, and that is the path to enlightenment, regular practice of one of these forms?
Yeah, I do think so, although you will find people who've been meditating for years and years and are not enlightened, so that's kind of discouraging. Other people get enlightened in their first meditation or soon after. I wish that I could, but But the good thing about meditation is that it makes you feel better every day. So you don't have to be enlightened, and it's still. So it is good to find a form of meditation that feels right to you, and to start it. But I'm not going to say that it will be the only thing that will help you. I think it could be a big thing. And all the meditation people also, there are communities like sanghas are for what Buddhists, and some people really like those. Some people are introverts and not very interested in that sort of thing, but the TM people also have organizations and meetings. And if you have the time and the money, not usually very expensive, consider going on a meditation retreat.
Yeah.
That can really give you a boost.
Yeah, I have had great success with that. I'm almost finished. Thank you for bearing with me. And as a highly sensitive person, that tendency to be overreactive or overreacted to stimuli would be one of the major reasons I would want to seek enlightenment, so that
Yep.
could come down.
It helps. It really helps. It's not that you don't still have stuff, but it's like there's the waves on the surface of the ocean, then there's the depths. And you begin to identify with the depths. And you come out of the depths in a calmer place. I think that's clear.
Yeah. And, I don't know, I can't stop, but one last thing. Yeah, because so in the Western medical system, there's always this recommendation to take the pharmaceuticals, for overreactivity,
I
for
wonder
anxiety.
who's making money on that deal.
Yeah, I know, but
Well, and it works. I mean, it stops.
For some-
the patient comes out, and it's like, you understand it can help, but it isn't a long-term solution.
right.
It's
It's
certainly
not a
not
root-
for highly sensitive people.
Right.
A lot for highly sensitive people is getting the right environment, and if you got yanked
That's
out
right.
of the right environment, work on that. That's
Yeah.
important.
Thank you. I think that's what I needed to hear again. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
You bet.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so I'm hearing, it's like my questions, how do I hold on to them? Because everything you're saying is like making me think about other
It's
things,
okay.
too.
They'll come to you. The
Yeah.
ones that matter.
So I think two things. I'm a psychologist, and so a lot of people, I work with people who are coming to clean up the psychological,
Right.
and then they stay, and I get to this point of, I think there's something more spiritual here, but I'm tentative because it's not my training. It's not.
Right.
However, it's prior to my training, I think I had a spiritual orientation from a very young age. So it's kind of been a separate part of my identity. But nothing, I went to formal, and when in getting my doctorate, I didn't have a class in religion or spirituality. It was something, off to the side. So one question is, in a psychotherapeutic process with a client, if you're sensing that could be kind of the next place to go, how to do that?
I think that everybody has this waking up impetus in them to grow, to move, but they go through stages. And what we really don't want to do is to push people into a stage they're not ready for. And that, as a therapist, you know exactly about the importance of people being ready for the next step. So what you do is what you're used to doing, which is asking those thoughtful questions. Could this be a spiritual component to this? Or what is your history spiritually? And then you listen. That's all you have to do, because they will grow from talking about it. It's all back to Carl Rogers. People grow from talking about their stuff. And they may not grow in front of your eyes. It may be tomorrow or a month from now that they grow, but they will grow. And that's pretty powerful. So that's part of an answer.
I think too, there's the piece of, I don't know, I think there's spiritual and religion, so
Oh,
there's
well,
kind of
that's
these, right?
another topic,
So I
isn't it?
think I
Yeah.
like to kind of, it's almost like do an inventory of people's, where they're at. Like
Taking their history, their
right,
spiritual history.
Right. And which again was not necessarily a part of my formal training as I'm doing the DSM and all that, but it's an important piece that, and, to assess.
It's an important piece. Don't apologize for it. I think psychologists need to take this in when it's there with the patient, because otherwise you just only partly do. Just like would you not talk about their sexual life?
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, it is a part of, how I practice with people. It's like
Right.
an element of like all the different domains,
Right.
and that's a domain. And for some people, it's not an important domain, and they, it's nothing that, so I assess that. I think that's helpful. So the question, can you say the question again? Because it's a nice question, how you posed it. It's a, how you would
How do
bring
you
this
talk
into the
about it?
conversation. Yeah.
Right, and then you brought up religion versus spirituality, and of course that gets into the domain of people becoming dissatisfied. If you think of people as moving through levels, then they get to a certain level and they may begin to be uncomfortable with something, but they were raised a certain way. Ken Wilber does a nice talk about this, that in school we don't have any chance to grow through spiritual levels of thinking about things. We don't talk about it. So if we don't talk about it, people usually are staying with what they were taught as children, or and they don't think more deeply. Where do people get stuck the most? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do bad things happen at all? Does God care about me? Obviously, God does not care about me. Look at the mess in the world. God doesn't care about anything. Why should I believe in God? So people often get stuck there. The Holocaust completely bummed out a lot of Jews, I'd say, right?
Right. So another question I have, and I love that you talked about your grandson. I didn't quite catch how old your grandson is, but I think of it as, how are we orienting young people to these ideas? I know for myself, I think even though there was a spiritual piece, but I was born into a Roman Catholic tradition of a family, so that was a part of the socialization. I would say I'm getting more connected with that faith now than I was through all the socialization of it, and I have two children who I'm connecting with that faith, and to not be fundamentalists around it or any kind of faith organizational tradition, but to as a pathway of talking about, the
So that's a very mature level of being in your religion,
right?
Not being an all or none thing or pushing it onto other people. That's part of the principle of the HHSP, is that you don't push your thing onto somebody else. Yeah.
Right.
And if we don't talk about it at all, how does anybody,
Well, I think like if I hadn't had that early just exposure to a faith tradition,
right? You would have.
I would be like, what faith do I choose? Where do I go? So
why bother to have a faith?
Yeah. Why bother at all?
Because the schools are mostly teaching science, and science sort of teaches.
Correct.
By the time you get to college, you're going to have a lot of professors who are basically atheists or agnostics.
Yes. Yeah. And that's
So
a little
that's
bit
what
of that
people are being taught.
crisis of how do you bring this to, I think on a positive side, I see in education, whether it's private, a religious based or secular, that there's socio-emotional curriculum. So that's
that. And the other thing is just that people are extremely spiritual. Even people who are not raised in any tradition, we see these Pew polls, like huge percentage of people believe in all kinds of things you think most people don't believe in. So why is that? Yeah. So maybe we don't have to worry too much about them. But I'll tell you the funny story about the grandson who's learned meditation. His parents like to travel all over the world with their kids. They can afford it. So they went to Thailand. They went into a Buddhist monastery. I've got a picture of my grandson sitting next to this guy who's his age, this Buddhist kid in his Buddhist orange robes. And that guy taught him mindfulness meditation, which is the first thing that you teach somebody if you're teaching them Buddhism. So he came back all excited about that, and I had to be, okay, well, why don't you try out some other ways of meditating? So
there's pathways. I mean, travel, right? And just
travel
getting
is
exposed to
a very
different
good,
cultures.
good
and
to
different,
see other cultures.
Yeah.
Walking into the church and thinking, boy, it feels different in here. Why do people go into these places?
yeah.
There's many. I think it's really not going to go away, even though some people would like it to.
I have a question. Listening to you speak, also thinking about Dolores Cannon's book.
You are.
Where she talks about the 3 waves of volunteers, and listening to it, and you're talking about how back in the day it was a supernova, and then we look at it now based on her books. This is the 3rd wave that is coming, essentially, of highly sensitive people, individuals, intuitives, and listening to as well, just the meditation aspect and getting to the enlightenment. How are people moving towards coherence in the soul, in the layers of consciousness that they're landing, to better integrate those experiences? Because you can get enlightened, and what of the integration part? Does your book cover that part? Do you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's certainly important to integrate. That's that idea of dipping the cloth and then fading the cloth. That you want to go into meditation, then come out and be active. And enlightenment isn't enlightenment if it fades. I mean, it's got to be there all the time. But some people do have problems integrating it. Each person in their own, because we have individual nervous systems, have different ways of different problems that may arise. Do you have something more specific? Because you read that kind of fast, and I'm not sure that I got what you were asking.
Well, we can see that energetically there's a lot of changes that are happening, and we're seeing a lot more people get into that portions of consciousness is changing. And I think that's the part they're saying, that everybody has the capability to get into that space.
Right.
Which is, I think, your goal of writing your book. And I'm just kind of looking at it as the integration part. How do those individuals, as far as tools that are there for the integration part, being overall, if it's covered, since it's a little bit of the dipping in and coming back out, it's like coherence of the soul in a way.
Well, certainly some people become enlightened quite suddenly and find it quite hard to integrate. Eckhart Tolle supposedly sat on a park bench for months. I mean, he'd go home and sleep, and he didn't know what to do with what had happened to him because of not having teachers who could help him. And if you go to psychotherapy, you're liable to be told you're crazy, so that's not going to be very helpful. And then there's sort of ways that people can get enlightened or even think they're enlightened that then don't provide them with the best information about how to integrate it. So you're bringing up an important question, and I'm sort of mumbling around it because part of the problem is that it's going to vary with people a lot and vary over time. So my friend Robert Foreman, who became enlightened in Ram Dass, told me he was enlightened, and at the time he was a young guy. He was a shoplifter. That's how he kept himself. A lot of kids in the 60s felt it was okay to take their food from Safeway. There's a big corporation, And he eventually saw that there was something wrong with that, but there was nobody there to sort of tell him that, partly because the tradition of the 8 limbs of yoga and the Eightfold Path of Buddhism talks about right action, but actually TM teachers, Maharishi didn't talk about that. He said that if you meditate long enough, you'd start behaving better and better, because he didn't want to lecture people about morality. But again, if you don't, we are having people get enlightened outside of the context of a tradition. And some of those people are getting really confused. I talk a lot in my book about the whole non-duality movement, where there are a lot of people getting enlightened, but then feeling like non-duality comes from Advaita Vedanta. It's basically that everything is an illusion and that everything is one. So if everything is one and you are one with everything, what is the point of doing anything? Well, that's really not the traditional teaching at all. But because it's been pulled out of its tradition and people who are getting enlightened are then teaching other people without the context. So yeah, we're going to have problems with integrating it. And I think one of the big questions that nobody's asked yet that I think is very important is this really going to change the world? Is this going to change individuals? Is it going to do anything for the world? And we sure hope so. Certainly enlightened people should be good for the world.
Yeah, I was going to ask the second question in my part on that one. I am reading Nicholas Christ and James Fowler is a social network theory over of how things map. And essentially it's how people connect in one-to-one. So this is being technically a level one, because we're all here gathered together. We go and connect to others. It spreads in 3 degrees down. So my hopes overall for people would be essentially that more of this information goes out to really, really spread a lot more, because we are seeing it in that sense.
It already is spreading so much. It's without my book, it's spreading so much. And of course, when information spreads, it doesn't always spread accurately,
Yeah.
Well, I really hope that enlightened people I really hope that this is a step in human evolution, but I can't guarantee it. Andrew Harvey, who's a spiritual activist, he calls himself, asked the Dalai Lama whether human race is going to make it, given climate change and all that. And the Dalai Lama didn't know. He said, we got to act like we're going to be okay, but I don't know. I don't remember his exact words, but it was basically he didn't know. We have to keep doing the right thing and watch what's going on. I suspect the Dalai Lama has more faith than that. I imagine he just didn't want to be put on paper on that, because you don't want to say, oh, everything's going to be okay. Then everybody will stop giving money to National Wildlife, whatever. So it's all going to be okay. There's no climate change. It's just bad weather. So we really hope that it's going to make a difference. And we're all watching, and we're all part of the experiment. And everybody who I really believe that seeking enlightenment, whether you get there or not, is going to help the world. I really believe that. But that's a belief, or I wouldn't have written my book if I didn't believe that. The TM organization has a big thing of getting people to do their meditation together. They just announced they've got 10,000 people doing it all together someplace in India, and that's the whole movement. But I don't know. It may be that if you had 100 enlightened people, really so there's levels. We haven't talked about the levels, and there's awakening, and then there's unity consciousness, which is a higher level. Bunch of people in that, maybe 100 people in that, maybe that's all it would take. We don't know. This is such a huge experiment we're part of. Huge experiment, yes.
Hi there, Elaine. I've been a big fan of yours since 2012. And it's been, your books and your research has been life-changing for me.
Good.
I think it was so refreshing to read your book about highly sensitive person in love and all these different books that came after that and before that. I got into meditation about over 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I've done Vipassana meditation, retreats 3 times. And I think as a child, I've always taken in the depth of knowledge, really picked up on my environment. So I'll save you all that background, but I guess some of my questions too are, in your book, do you bring in any of the energy that is with spirituality? And what I mean by that is that and this is my own theory, so I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, but that, when there's negative environments, negativity in our environment, those of us who are empaths or highly sensitive, we take it deeply. And for many of us, we just sit with it. Everybody, I believe truly human beings are a whole spectrum of spiritual beings. It's just a matter of uncovering the layers from all the different ancestry or past lives or whatnot to shed it in order to let our full energy beam out to its fullest potential. But when we take in the negativity around us, we could either sit with it and bring us down, or we process it like a filter and push out as spiritual warriors, being resilient in very turbulent times right now, spiritually turbulent times. I'm wondering if you brought in any of that energy work. And what I'm alluding to is maybe a little bit of the chakra system, or even the energy flows in our meridians in our body, to be able to observe as a highly sensitive person, like, oh, look at that, through meditation or mindfulness, like, oh, look, that just stuck to me. Oh, I can't get it off. I keep thinking about this ugly situation I had to deal with. Or processing it with mindfulness and whatnot, and then pushing out our energy to kind of help clear up the energy out there. And I'm apologizing to speak in very, broad conceptual terms, but I
think you should write a book about this.
I am working towards thoughts,
You are.
trying to pull them together.
Good.
I'm so scattered because I have so many thoughts. I'm trying to figure out how to structure it for the best deliverance without sounding like stuff all over the place like a messy closet.
Yeah.
So I'd
it
love
is
to hear your thoughts.
hard
So
to-
just to simplify it, is just did you bring in any energy work or?
I'll tell you what I did. I
Researching.
did not. I did not. I've mentioned people who have Kundalini experiences and become enlightened that way, because and some people don't become enlightened, but Kundalini, but I don't, and I'll tell you why. I really was trying to write for the broadest possible audience, and that includes people who would think that was all a bunch of baloney.
Right.
So I just didn't. I didn't talk about a lot of stuff that are important to people because of that. And but I think other people are writing good books, and you sound like you could write a really good book about it.
I'd love to. Thank you for that support.
No, my book will be a disappointment in that area.
This question is about something that we haven't really spoken of. But when our daughter was 5.5 months pregnant, she went to her doctors for an exam, and her doctors did a lot of testing and said that her baby had a genesis of the corpus callosum, which meant that the right and the left sides of the brains were not attached, and they were moving further apart in
Right.
his head,
I understand what you're talking about.
and offered her to
Right.
get rid of the baby because
Right.
he was going to have a lot of trouble. Well, he's 10 now, and he's not the excited, athletic boy that most of the kids around here are like, but he is very, very thoughtful and generous and can see things that other people don't see. And I wonder if that could be a physical part of being sympathetic and understanding. Could that?
Sounds like it is for him.
For him, yeah.
Absolutely.
And then I have had 2 TBIs,
Yes, I know what those are.
TBIs in the last 5 years.
Ooh, bad news.
And all I have lost is the name of things.
Which everybody's losing anyway. As you
I
get
know,
older.
but it's everything. I can look at that thing on the wall and I can say, that round thing that's made out of green stuff, what is that called? You know, I can't get that word right now.
Uh-huh.
Can that be fixed?
No. You're lucky that you don't have a serious case of dementia. If you
My
have,
daughter's afraid that I am going to go that way.
well, I know it happens. If you have more than one concussion and you've had, plus, I've had one, and the neurosurgeon said to me, don't do it again. I gave up horseback riding, which killed me to do. But horses are unpredictable, and I said, my brain's more important to me, slightly more important than horseback riding. But yeah, I have a dear friend who fell down twice, got a concussion 1 month apart, and ended up with dementia. And the third time he fell down and had a huge stroke and died. I mean, you just got to stay on your feet when you're older, ma'am. But you're lucky. The neurosurgeon said to me after my concussion, you don't have any loss. He said, you have a lot of reserves. And I said, yeah, how many years of meditating? You bet I have reserves. Better have reserves. I mean, it's not a written, a done deal, but just be really careful. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We want our brains and bodies are all we got this time around, unless we go around again, but this is the one you're working with.
So now that we're talking about the body, I wanted to know if you include in your book any correlates with becoming enlightened and the physiology that
Well, Fred Travis's work, I
changes.
totally
Right.
wrote about that. Dan Brown was doing something with Tibetan Buddhism before he died of Parkinson's. These things happen. But I wish there was more. There's a lot of work on how meditation improves this and improves that. And the longer you've meditated, the more that it improves this, improves that. The Buddhists are just not doing that kind of looking at enlightenment. I think it's because they can't agree exactly. And if they start doing there's several articles I've read about them saying, Buddhists saying, let's not do neuroscience, it's going to get messy. They do neuroscience on meditation, but not on enlightenment.